The technique that I'm going to show you will work regardless of what footage you have. So let's just jump straight in and I will explain everything as we go. We're going to select the first clip just so we know it's what we got, and then we're going to head over to the color tab in DaVinci Resolve. Here you can see a waveform. If you don't have this open, then click on your graph button up here and then drop down on this list and you should see a selection of scopes. Waveform is my favorite. What this graph is showing is what we have in our image up here, but instead of showing it as an image, it's showing it to us in all the pixels. So we have our darkest pixels down at the bottom, our brightest at the top, and then it is split into our RGB, our red, greens and blues. We're going to jump over to the color wheels for our primary colors, and we are going to bring this footage out, stretch it out and make it look good. The first thing that you need to know about DaVinci Resolve color grading is that it operates off a node-based system. This can get extremely complex, but we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to keep everything on one node, and we're not even going to touch nodes for now. This is just to bring you up to speed, to get you familiar with how everything works, and then we'll break down what nodes are, go into some more complex stuff later on in the editing section. The first thing that you need to get the hang of is getting your contrast exactly right. What this means is that we need to spread out this graph so that our bright parts are where we want them to be, our dark parts are where we want them to be, and our midtones are where we want them to be. Obviously, it's going to depend where everything is shifted around, depending on how you filmed it, what you've used, and how well you've aced your filming regardless. In this case, we have very flat footage, and I find that the easiest way to bring this out a bit is to add some contrast in. If you have enough contrast, you won't need to do this, but in this case, we have no contrast. So I'm going to move this up to 1.3. I'm going to hit enter, and already you can see that's brought a lot back, but it's not gone too crazy. We've got lots of space up here till we hit pure white, which is that top line, and we've got lots of space here before we hit pure black, which is the bottom line. I am going to stretch this up now by increasing our gain. You can simply click and drag and bring this up, and we want to aim for our peaks to start getting close to that 1023 mark, but not actually touch it. We're going to do the same again with our lift, which is the darker parts of our video, and we're going to bring that down again, so we're just almost touching. You can see this has done an awful lot to bring the image back. We have a lot more contrast and it's starting to look quite nice. I am also going to add some color boost at this point. I know that these cameras come out quite nice, about 15, but this is basically adding some saturation back into our video, which was not very saturated, didn't have much color because it was filmed flat in log. Gamma is the positioning of your midtones. If you bring this lower, it's going to shift your midtones down towards the dark parts, towards the shadows. If you lift this, it's going to shove them up towards your highlight. The way gamma works is it doesn't move everything perfectly up and perfectly down. It squeezes everything towards the highlights as it comes up, and it squeezes everything towards the shadows as it goes down. Looking at your waveform graph, you want to get this at around 512. So you can see we have our midtones quite clearly. This is all the foliage behind him at around this point. Next, we need to get our temperature correctly set. I filmed this very close to what it should be, but this is something that you just have to get used to seeing. Usually there'll be some white in your image. For example, there is a little bit of white on this strap, and if you do that, you can get away with using this color tool, selecting the part that you know should be white and selecting it, and then it's going to make some minor adjustments so that that white, and you know that should be pure white, is pure white. If you make it cooler, you will make everything more blue. If you make it warmer, you will make everything more red. Your tint is between your greens and your pinks. And basically, you can adjust the color temperature that the footage was shot at. In this case, I'm going to pull it off the graph. So we can see here that we have Tom's skin, which is this part here being the brightest part of the image in the middle here. When it comes to skin, you generally want the greens closer to the blues than the reds. So you can see our green here has moved down to our blue here, and our red is leading there. I'm actually going to play with the green a little bit there just to really dial it in, and I am going to make this very slightly cooler because we are in the shade and we are potentially a little bit warm here. I'm completely colorblind, so I do this entirely off the graph, but I can see now that his skin tones are as they should be, and everything else is just going to come out of the white balance that it is. With our midtones in the right place, our highlights coming close to the brightest part, our shadows coming down to the darkest part, we now want to really tweak and perfect how our contrast is looking. Before we go any further, there's one little tweak I like to make to this, and that's just to bump our shadows up very slightly. The reason why I like doing this is it just brings out a lot more detail, but you can see in doing that, that's now shoved everything up, so I'm going to just bring our lift back down a tiny bit. Also, I've accidentally left the gamma a little bit high from my example earlier, so I'm going to bring that back down to 0.2. Let's do a quick run through of what's just happened. We have brought our contrast back to our flat footage. We have then used DaVinci Resolve's color boost feature to bring back some color and saturation to our image. And we have then gone ahead and got our lift, gamma, and gain set correctly to spread out our scope so that it is filling the entirety of our graph, leaving a little bit of space at the top and a little bit of space at the bottom. We've then brought our shadows up to bring detail back in our shadows, and then we've made some small tweaks to get it just right. We've also made some little adjustments to our color temperature so that our skin is coming out with the reds at the top, greens in the middle, and the blues just slightly underneath the greens. There's one more thing we're going to do that's really going to make this piece of video stand out, and this is to specifically modify our contrast with curves. If you hover over curves here, click on curves, you will see a new graph that we can use and adjust this line to play with our contrast and where the contrast is applied the most. We have a similar situation here to our scope on the right hand side. We have our darkest parts, our shadows, on this point, which is to the most left, like this is to the most bottom. And then at the top here on the right hand side, we have our highlight control, which is the same as basically hitting our highlights up here. This is where we can really pull these in. So I'm going to get this just so it starts touching the top. And you can just see that the bits that should be pure white, which are these bits in the background, are just starting to tap the top of our waveform. And I'm going to adjust the bottom just to pull in so that our black parts are truly back and just touching the 0 line. Next, we're going to do what's known as an S-curve. This is going to effectively make our blacks and our darker parts richer and deeper, our highlights more bright, and it's going to stretch out the detail in the middle. So you want to click about where your information, basically the information that's in our graph, is kind of shown like it is here, but with these peaks, it will look different every single time. You want to go to the leftmost side where you can see it basically just goes black at this point, and we're going to bring this down until it looks really nice. So that's quite punchy. It's a little bit aggressive if anything, but that's how I like my videos to look. You really do this by eye, so look at the image and basically pull it to where you want. You then want to do another click and drag where you effectively come to the top end of your video and you want to just bring it up until again you are happy with how it looks. And you can see why it's called an S-curve, because you have effectively made an S go like this. If I exaggerate it, which will look disgusting, you can really see that curve. I'm going to bring that back now to where it looks good. And really, you want to often make minor tweaks. You don't want to overdo this. What you can do now, if you like, is you can click in the middle and basically choose where your midtones go. In this case, I actually want my midtones to go a little bit darker, so I'm just going to bring them down. Also, in this case, we really have the brightest part of our image being Tom's skin, and we don't want that to lean towards white. So I'm actually going to bring this back down, and I'm going to bring our gain back down a tiny bit more so that his skin is nicely exposed. At this point, it's really just a matter of just making some minor tweaks, but I think that has come out pretty nicely.
One of the best tools for the upper body when it comes to calisthenics and bodyweight training.
Now, because this is all filmed very similarly, we can literally copy and paste it across all our clips and then make minor tweaks to each clip. So I'm going to come across the second clip. I can see that we're slightly clipped out the top there, not quite touching the bottom there. So I'm going to bring it down to be slightly darker and bring it down to be slightly less bright there. And you can see here to here is looking like a much nicer transition. And our S-curves are going to change a bit. So our bright parts are maybe there. I'll get rid of that middle point and bring that in. And you can now see the jump between those two is really, really similar. And I didn't change the white balance of my shot throughout, and the sky didn't change so much, so it should be okay. We can bring it down very slightly because we're just touching the top there. And it's really just a matter now of just making minor tweaks as you make your way through. This tweaking is going to be the same the whole way through, so I am going to finish this off and I will see you in the next video. See you soon.
It starts right here.
So we're out in the forest. If you haven't met before, this is Tim, who's helped me massively improve the quality of videos over the past couple of years now.